I'm a candidate for President of the United States of America.
A third Bush eyes the White House. Former Florida Governor Jeb Bush jumps into the Republican race. Bishops resign. Leaders of a major American archdiocese accused of failing to protect children step down. Pope Francis to parents. Stand up to attacks on the family that destroy society. And 800 years later, we look back at the signing of the Magna Carta and its legacy. Those stories and more on EWTN News Nightly for Monday, June 15th, 2015. Good evening from Washington. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick with your news now. Pledging to protect the most vulnerable in our society, Jeb Bush launches his presidential bid today. But the former Florida governor faces policy questions, even from some fellow Republicans. Susanne LaFrankie is at the White House with more tonight.
Brian, the question is the country ready for another Bush? Some conservative Republicans say no, that Bush is far too moderate. Yet many political pundits say that Jeb Bush has the influence and the money to make it all the way.
I'm a candidate for President of the United States of America.
The rally location, Miami-Dade College. It serves a large, diverse student body, symbolic of the nation Jeb Bush wishes to lead.
We will take Washington, the static capital of this dynamic country, then turn it out of the business of causing problems, and we'll get it back on the right side of free enterprise and freedom for all Americans.
Yesterday, Bush's campaign released an online video featuring a varied number of Floridians touting his impact as governor.
I think Governor Bush changed a lot of lives in Florida.
His campaign logo leaves out the Bush surname, indicating a branding decision. During a weekend interview, Bush acknowledged the challenge of being a member of a political dynasty.
I don't have to disassociate myself from my family. I love them, but I know that for me to be successful, I'm going to have to show my heart.
While Bush has political influence and is likely to raise a record amount of money, he has yet to become a frontrunner. His positions on immigration and education standards are very unpopular among party conservatives. But on the issue of life, Weekly Standard writer Michael Warren says Bush is committed.
On social issues, he's very much a conservative. On life, both at conception and natural end of life, he's very much a traditional social conservative on those issues.
He's already taking heat from Democrats.
Jeb Bush, as governor, was all about making it harder, not easier, for people in the middle class or who wanted to reach the middle class to get there.
Jeb Bush is unquestionably one of the top-tier candidates. He is number 11 of the major Republican candidates that will be in this primary. However, political observers say, unlike 2012, 2016, there will be much more competition. Brian?
Susanne LaFrankie at the White House. Thanks, Suzanne. Some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. Pope Francis today accepts the resignation of the Archbishop of the St. Paul, Minneapolis Archdiocese. This after prosecutors charged the Archdiocese with failure to protect children from clergy sex abuse. Wyatt Goolsby has more tonight.
Brian, Archbishop John Neinstead says he wants to give the Archdiocese of St. Paul and Minneapolis, quote, a new beginning amidst the many challenges we face. Both he and his deputy bishop stepped down after prosecutors there charged the Archdiocese of having failed to protect children from a pedophile priest. Officials of the Archdiocese are calling Archbishop Neinstead's resignation a painful process, but Auxiliary Bishop Andrew Cousins, who remains in place, says his departure is a chance for greater healing.
We will continue to do all that we can to create safe environments for all children and to bring just resolution to the claims against the Archdiocese.
Today, Pope Francis accepted the resignations of Neinstead and Auxiliary Bishop Lee Pichet. The move comes less than a week after the Holy Father approved a new church tribunal to judge bishops who had failed to protect children. Many see the church's moves as a step in the right direction, but some victims groups say more needs to be done, and Pope Francis is key.
I think it's a organizational problem. It's a problem that goes much deeper. This has to be looked into, and he has to change the culture of the whole organization so that we no longer have to go through these kinds of things.
Also today, the Vatican indicted a former ambassador to the Dominican Republic, Archbishop Joseph Wesolowski. He is charged with sexually abusing minors. Wesolowski, now defrocked, is the highest-ranking Vatican official to ever stand trial for a sex crime.
The fact that there now exists a tribunal means that all over the world, the faithful and the people who feel that in their diocese there has been gross negligence in dealing with such affairs, now they know exactly where to send their complaints, and so they can obtain justice.
Pope Francis appointed Archbishop Bernard Hebda to serve as interim leader of the Twin Cities Archdiocese until a permanent replacement is named. Attorneys in Minnesota have filed 6 criminal charges against the Archdiocese. Brian.
Thank you, Wyatt. Libya's temporary government claims a veteran al-Qaeda-linked terrorist was killed in a U.S. airstrike this weekend. Saturday's strike targeted Algerian Mokhtar Belmokhtar and a group of Libyan members of a terrorist group. He was designated as a global terrorist 12 years ago. The U.S. Air Force Secretary isn't confirming the kill, saying the results of the raid are still being studied. The woman charged with helping 2 convicted murderers escape from a New York prison pleads not guilty. Joyce Mitchell, a prison tailor, waived her preliminary hearing during a brief court appearance today. She is charged with promoting contraband and facilitating criminals. Prosecutors say she actually agreed to be the getaway driver for the June 6th escape, but backed out. More than 800 searchers continue to comb the wilderness near that maximum security prison, looking for those 2 escapees. 2 young people lose limbs Sunday in separate coastal North Carolina shark attacks. A 12-year-old girl and a 16-year-old boy were attacked about 20 yards offshore in waist-deep water. Surgeons amputated the girl's left arm below the elbow and the boy's left arm below his shoulder. The victims are in good condition today. There have now been 3 shark attacks in that area in just this past week. Fire engulfs a 19th century basilica in western France at the end of Mass this morning. Everyone got out safely. It took 90 firefighters and special aircraft several hours to control the fire. A blackened shell is what's left of that basilica's roof. The fire may have been accidentally sparked by workers on the roof. Pope Francis hopes for a diverse global audience for his upcoming encyclical on the environment.
Questa enciclica è rivolta a tutti.
At Sunday's Angelus, the Pope saying this encyclical is meant for everyone. The Holy Father prayed for people to grow in responsibility toward the common home that God has given us. The teaching document will be launched with a Vatican news conference on Thursday. A Vatican cardinal, a Greek Orthodox theologian, and an atheist scientist will participate. The Supreme Court will not hear an appeal to revive a pro-life North Carolina law. That law would have required abortion providers to show and describe an ultrasound to pregnant mothers before an abortion. Many pro-life leaders credit ultrasound technology with helping to shift attitudes on abortion. Today's High Court ruling leaves a 2011 appeals court decision in place. We have Sarah Torre of the Heritage Foundation and Gloria Purvis with Black Catholics United for Life joining us. So this ruling is an obvious setback, but we've seen some pro-life victories recently, haven't we, Sarah?
Absolutely. Just last week, the Fifth Circuit upheld a Texas law that requires abortion clinics to meet the same cleanliness and safety standards as other clinics that do outpatient procedures there. This is a real victory for women's health, women's safety. There are many dozens of abortion clinics that have been investigated, had criminal charges brought against them for neglecting women's health and safety. So states like Texas and many others, these are really common sense and much needed policies.
And this law could effectively close most of the abortion centers in Texas. You must be encouraged by this, Gloria.
Well, I'm very encouraged. Number one, it unmasks the lie that the pro-life movement doesn't care about women. And number two, that abortion is just like a manicure. It's a very brutal procedure, and this law helps protect women by offering basic sanitation and surgical setup in these clinics. This is a win for women.
And pro-family rulings in the North Carolina ruling that affects the issuing of licenses to gay couples, marriage licenses?
Sure. So there's now a law in North Carolina that protects the religious liberty of civil servants, particularly magistrates, clerks, who object to participating in same-sex ceremonies or weddings from solemnizing or providing licenses for those. They can simply recuse themselves from doing any sort of marriage process. This is really a win-win. It protects their religious liberty while also ensuring that no one who can lawfully receive a license still gets that license.
Do you think other states will follow suit?
I hope so, especially the states where the majority of the population have voted to uphold the traditional understanding of marriage. I think this is a good, and other states should follow suit.
On a Michigan ruling dealing with adoption, again with same-sex couples, why is this important to religious freedom? I know that's your area of expertise, Sarah.
These are also, this trio of laws that Governor Snyder just signed are really important. They protect the ability of faith-based adoption and foster care providers to continue living out their values, including wanting to place children with married moms and dads. We've seen in Illinois, Massachusetts, even right here in Washington, D.C., Catholic Charities and other adoption agencies basically forced out of that arena simply because they believe that children do best with a married mom and dad and want to place them that way. So this protects a diversity of providers and hopefully ensures that more children are placed in forever, permanent, loving homes by protecting as many providers as possible.
As we prepare for some important Supreme Court rulings, do you see any precedents here? Do you think that some of these cases will set a precedent for other states to act
I'm hoping they do. I'm hoping, especially with what happened in Michigan, that people will see that adoption agencies should be allowed to place children with families that they think will best serve those children. Of course, I think no child should be purposely deprived of a mother and a father, and those adoption agencies that think like I do should still be allowed to help place children where they think they'll best be served.
Gloria Purvis, Black Catholics for Life, and Sarah Torre with the Heritage Foundation. We always appreciate both of you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks so much for having us on.
Coming up, Pope Francis urges parents to stand up to attacks on the family. And with craft beers all the rage, hops farmers gear up to keep up with demand. Do not speak ill of each other. Advice from Pope Francis for couples who are separated. The Holy Father also urges them never to forget their duties as parents. Thanks for joining us on this Monday evening, June 15th. I'm Brian Patrick. Pope Francis also calls on parents to stand up to ongoing attacks on the family.
Queste colonizzazioni ideologiche che fanno tanto male e distruggono una società, un paese, una famiglia.
Francis saying these attacks hurt and destroy society and the family. At a convention for the Diocese of Rome, the Holy Father focused his comments on the family. He says parents need to protect children from ideas that hurt society and the nation. He also says nursing homes should only be a last resort for the elderly. And Pope Francis tells a group of Italian scouts they play a role in the church's pastoral life. The Holy Father met with thousands of scouts Saturday. He says they shouldn't settle for a decorative presence at major events, but should be active in their communities. Ahead of the Supreme Court ruling in this month, on the redefinition of marriage, tens of thousands signed a pledge defending traditional marriage. This full-page open letter to the Supreme Court recently ran in the Washington Post and USA Today. It urges justices not to force people to choose between the state and the laws of God. Among the signers, Dr. Alveda King of Priests for Life and presidential candidate Rick Santorum. We have Deacon Keith Fournier of the Richmond Diocese, the co-drafter of this marriage pledge. And Deacon, what do you hope comes from this?
Well, of course, Brian, what we really hope is that the Supreme Court begins to understand the gravity of this decision and realizes they do not have the authority to change the truth about marriage. Marriage is between one man and one woman, intended for life, open to life, and formative of family. And no court, no executive, no legislature can change that truth. It's written in the natural moral law. So even by doing the open letter, it's respectful, but it's clear. We wanted the court to know the implications that would follow their rendering an improper decision, thinking they can actually redefine marriage.
And doesn't this, in fact, say that we couldn't abide by a ruling?
We can't, because it would be an unjust law. And that's rooted in the natural moral law. Dr. King referred to the natural moral law in a letter from a Birmingham jail, because we know that when the Supreme Court issues an opinion that is errant, and they've done it before, Dred Scott, Buck versus Bell, Roe, Doe, the police power of the state follows. And we cannot accept that ruling. Now, the implications on religious freedom are extraordinary, but what is most important right now is for people to realize that should the court make the wrong decision in the Obergefell versus Hodges case, when we wake up the next day, marriage will still be between one man and one woman, intended for life, open to life, and formative of family. What will change is the ground will shift. And we who are Christians and other people of faith and goodwill will have to face the challenges of living in a culture that has basically rejected not only marriage, but the entire social order built upon it.
Very much like the Roe v. Wade decision, where we have to live in a culture that says this is legal. Why do why are you standing up against it? So if that happens, but how can we defend marriage without being accused of bigotry or discrimination?
Well, it's going to become increasingly difficult if Obergefell is wrongly decided, because it will, in fact, ensure that we will be accused increasingly of discrimination, because it will raise to the level of a protected class homosexual unions and lesbian unions. It will treat them as marriage. And so we will have a problem. But I'll tell you what we should do. Clarity, charity, compassion, and conviction. We need to learn how to speak about this issue as not just a religious issue, but an issue rooted in the natural moral law that crosses cultures. And we need to learn. That's why we drafted the pledge, one of the reasons. We also need to do so with compassion. We are not against anyone. Everyone has human dignity, including those who have same-sex attraction. What we are standing for is marriage, as between one man and one woman. That cannot be changed, whether it's an Irish referendum or a Supreme Court justice.
We have a right to stand for marriage.
We have an obligation to do that, because otherwise we are not serving the real common good. This is not just a matter of protecting ourselves. It's a matter of believing that the future of the world, as John Paul said, passes through the family. And we want to protect children, and we want to protect the real common good.
Deacon Keith Fournier, we appreciate you joining us from the Diocese of Richmond. Well, for a group of farmers in Washington State, business is hopping. Catherine Zeltner has that story.
In Washington State's Yakima Valley, the hops fields are being prepped for a new season. Demand for hops, a key ingredient in craft beer, is overflowing, and especially for aroma hops.
This variety is one of my favorites, Amarillo, so it's a very sort of tangerine-y citrus, a little bit of grapefruit in there, and it works well in a number of different blends.
With craft brewers seeking distinct flavors like citrus, chocolate, and others, farmers like Ben St. Mary are rushing to expand production.
They use 4 to 5 times more hops than some of the bigger brewers, so in turn we're doing all we can to provide them with the best hops we can.
It's a tall order. Less than 50 farmers here produce about 75% of the nation's hops.
There is a lot of competition for that grower's time, land, and capacity to grow that variety versus possibly another variety.
The popularity of certain hops has led brewers like Adam Robbings to plan ahead. He signed hops contracts 9 months before brewing his first batch.
You know, hops are sort of like the lifeblood of the brewery.
Robbings expects the price of certain varieties to double in a few years.
So hops are available, but when you start looking at specific hop varieties for specific flavor profiles, that's when it gets a lot more difficult.
Craft brewers hope to command 20% of the nation's beer market by 2020, double from now, keeping these fields hopping for years to come. Catherine Zeltner, EWTN News Nightly.
Up next, we look at 2 historical writings. The Diary of Anne Frank, more than 70 years after it was written, and we travel back 800 years to the signing of the Magna Carta. On Monday, June 15th, it was 800 years ago today, England's King John signed the Magna Carta. That's Latin for Great Charter. It's considered the founding document for civil liberties, inspiring the U.S. Constitution. We'll have more with Jason Calvi in a little bit. Thanks for joining us on this Monday evening. Meanwhile, the story of Anne Frank, recorded in her diary, has impacted lives for decades. Friday marked 73 years since Anne Frank received her journal on her 13th birthday. Her diary is a personal account of hiding from the Nazis in Amsterdam. Her family and 4 other Jews were eventually discovered and sent to Auschwitz, where only her father survived. The Diary of Anne Frank, published in 1947, became required reading for millions. Stephen Luckert is curator of the permanent exhibition at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. What is it about the diary of Anne Frank that makes it just so endearing and gives it such longevity?
I think it's the poignancy of Anne's words, that they touch us in remarkable ways. She speaks to the hopes, the aspirations of young people. And also, when you think about that, she wrote this under such unfortunate circumstances. She had to go into hiding because of persecution from the Nazis, and yet she wrote these incredible words in her diary that now millions of people throughout the world read. And I think they're quite inspiring.
And the fact that she was so young certainly adds to it.
Yeah, she was 15 years old when she died. And I think when you think about Anne's story, it reminds you that she was one of between 1 and 1.5 million Jewish children that were murdered during the Holocaust. And it reminds us of the potential that all these children had to do great things. You know, her gifts as a writer, I mean, it's just a remarkable piece of literature. You can see, you know, what perhaps she could have become.
So her legacy continues to be just as important today, don't you think?
Oh, I do. I think that in many ways, Anne's diary is an entree for many people into the history of the Holocaust, that they can learn about this dark history and what it meant to an individual and to her family.
As we watch ISIS try to eliminate entire religious cultures, can this story be applied to this situation that we're facing now?
Well, I think the story of Anne Frank and her family and the diary really reminds us of the dangers of racism, of anti-Semitism, of intolerance. And we see that hasn't disappeared. And it reminds us that we all have a role to play, as in the case of Anne's story, that there were people that aided them while they were in hiding so that they could survive for years. But then there was also the person that denounced her and her family that ultimately led to them being shipped to Auschwitz and most of the family dying. So I think it reminds us about our role as people in the world, our responsibilities to our fellow citizens.
There's so much wonderful history at the Holocaust Museum here. Of course, can you tell us the website and send people?
Yes, our website is www.ushmm.org.
All right. And thank you so much to Stephen Luckert for joining us, the curator of the permanent exhibition at the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum. We appreciate you.
Well, thank you very much, Brian.
And Pope Francis says we need to be free from worldly noise and passions to receive God in our hearts. During his morning homily today, the Holy Father says some who go to Mass on Sunday don't follow God's word. He says that is scandalous and we need to welcome God instead. Referring to today's gospel, Francis says we must get rid of an eye for an eye mentality. We should instead turn the other cheek to those who do wrong to us. The Magna Carta, signed 800 years ago today, marked a turning point in Western civilization. It introduced the concept that the king is subject to the law, not above it. Jason Calvi has more on this living, breathing document 8 centuries after its signing.
800 years ago today, King John of England agreed to a basic list of rights for citizens. While the original charter was short-lived, it changed English law forever. For example, the Magna Carta paved the way for the right to a fair trial.
A person can't be imprisoned without following the law of the land or without following a judgment of one's peers.
It also set up checks and balances.
Should King John fail to live up to the terms of the charter, the barons had the right to deprive him of his property, effectively deprive him of all of his power until he redresses the wrongs.
Today, Queen Elizabeth joined other royals and government officials to celebrate the document.
What happened in these meadows 8 centuries ago is as relevant today as it was then. And that relevance extends far beyond Britain.
That includes the United States of America.
The heritage of the past is the seed that brings forth the harvest of the future. The message on the outside of the National Archives. And inside, people are able to check out this historic document and its heritage.
You can see a later version of the document at the National Archives, but the British Library houses 2 of the 4 originals, a charter alive and well hundreds of years later. Jason Calvi, EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you, Jason, and thanks for watching tonight. Until tomorrow, you can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and watch again on EWTN's YouTube page. For the EWTN News Nightly team, I'm Brian Patrick. Good night and God bless you.